last thing we're going to talk about this evening is DUI defense. And what happens when people drink and drive is sometimes their perception is not as good and they make mistakes out on the road. One thing I have found, because I've done a lot of DUI defense, is that a lot of times the police reports say, well, this guy had a 0.10 BAC, which equates to about 5 drinks, basically, depending on the time and when you started.
Whether they ate,
a lot of things.
over what, over
but the client goes, well,
yeah.
I had 2 beers. And then, but you start to look at it, and I think after people have 2 or 3 beers, maybe they lose track of how many beers they have. You know, I'm saying, you know.
Yeah, it was 2 the first hour.
Yeah.
3 the second.
Well, and also sometimes bartenders put more than 1 ounce in and that kind of thing.
Now you're talking mixed drinks.
Mixed drinks. So there can be some stuff like that. And then there's all kinds of things about when you get pulled over and when you had your last drink. For example, they have Boilermakers, which are beer and whiskey, right? Well, when you drink the beer, that opens up your stomach and it's going food, food, food. And then when you hit it with the whiskey, that whiskey goes right in your bloodstream. So you get hit hard then. So that's one reason you get that rush or that sudden impact. So depending on what you're drinking.
Hence why they do it.
That's why it's a cheap way to get there quick. But I mean, the point is, you know, your body reacts differently to different liquors and how much food you've eaten. Also, there are some confusing things. Soy sauce, white bread, a couple other things can actually give you a little bit of a BAC. So because when you're doing the breathalyzer, it doesn't measure alcohol per se. It measures like an aldehyde kind of thing. So it picks up a lot of different things. So there's a bunch of complicated chemistry involved in it. And there's also a rising alcohol and a decreasing alcohol. So there's different graphs that go with how alcohol arrives in your bloodstream. And then if you take a breathalyzer, you're taking a very small sample of that's the air that's coming off the blood in your lungs, and you're multiplying that times 2,400 times to guess what's in your bloodstream. So anytime you multiply something by 24 times, there's a chance of error. Right. So there's a lot of uncertainties. Like I had a case where the person had a 0.18 BAC, which is reasonably high, and you know, I think 0.20 is a felony. But I managed to get that an order to set aside or a reinstatement at the DMV, and then I prevailed at that hearing. And so technical grounds, you know, on the blood test, and then I got the 0.18 BAC DUI dismissed in Superior Court for other technical grounds. But one thing about it, that driver actually did there was some things in the road and he avoided them. And so he had good driving. So it wasn't like he did bad driving. Bad driving really counts against you.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up, because you really don't get pulled over. The police in this day and age have so many things going on. Unless you're weaving and literally running into a car or obviously doing something wrong on the road, you won't even get their attention. Now, if you crash into a car by the side of the road, of course the first thing they're gonna ask, would you have to drink? And I'm gonna tell you, all of our viewers, you have to understand one thing. You never talk to the police. If they ask you had a drink, you say, I don't drink. If they ask you, why did this happen? Cat ran across the road. Any number of things. But the last thing you do is start talking to the police and explaining. Because the first thing they're going to notice is your eyes, your slurred speech, or the way you're talking. That will trigger them out of the car. So what you do is, you ever get pulled over, and maybe you've had a couple, I'm not saying I want you to drink and drive. You hand them your insurance and your license, and that is it.
Well, another thing that you may want to do is just say, look, I want to talk to my attorney. I've got nothing to say. But now if they ask you to get out of the car, you got to get out of the car.
You got to get out of the car.
And some people say you don't got to give me your license. You can leave the window rolled up. That's not going to work out for you.
That is.
Because what happened, they did a whole thing called a welfare check. See, you used to have a warrant, but now they can go, Mr. Smith might not be feeling well in his house, so we're going to break down the door.
We're going to break down the door and see how he's doing.
Just to help him, right? So the Fourth Amendment's kind of, ever since the Patriot Act, it's kind of out the window.
Yeah, it's been thrown
So that
out.
part of the Constitution you might as well forget about. But I think one thing that's important, particularly in this case, The defendant was very, very helpful and very polite to the cop, right? And so it's not something, well, this kind of came up the other day in Minnesota, but cops kind of have this thing called contempt of cop. It's not a rule that's written down, but contempt of cop is not a good idea if you're a civilian, because this guy's armed and he's got things to do and he's busy and he doesn't really need people giving him guff. So if you go, look, I've got nothing to say, I want to talk to my attorney, and you sit on the ground and you let him cuff you and you get pulled away. I mean, it's like I had a case, and it was a restraining order case, but the guy, the cops came and says there's a problem here. Someone complained about it. The guy turns around and goes, and say, cuff me. And the judge looked at that and go, well, this guy, he might have been causing a ruckus, but as soon as the cop showed up, he turned around and presented his hands
his wrist for handcuff.
So if you don't let the cops cuff you, if you don't get out of the car, if they have to break the window and drag you out, you're getting yourself in a lot of problems. You could possibly get off with absolutely nothing if you behave properly.
Well, let's talk about this for a second, because just because you've had a couple of drinks, I'm going to say this at a couple different levels. The DUI law isn't about whether you necessarily go over a certain amount. You could have one drink, and if
you could still get a DUI.
You could still get a DUI, because they have two different types. There's 23, 153A and B.
Right.
And so
that's why they call it a deuce. Yeah.
And then what will happen is you were driving. It's called driving while impaired.
Right.
It's not I'm driving while intoxicated.
Well, they could also say, well, you didn't sleep last night. When's the last time you slept?
Yeah.
Are you on prescription drugs? You can be impaired without non-recreational.
Well, prescription drugs is a whole nother world
Right.
that we don't want to ever say you're on medication while you've been pulled over for any type of DUI, because they'll turn that into the next
Well,
story.
I'm just saying, in general, you have to understand the police's job is to elicit confessions, and they're experts. They go to classes and seminars. You're a civilian in kind of a battlefield conditions in this thing, and you can say, okay, I want to talk to my attorney, and you might get arrested. But really, at least you don't. But you're better off on the conviction, right? So be polite. Say, look, I don't want to answer any questions. I want to talk to my attorney, and
let them do their job.
Let them do what they want to do. They say step out of the car, you step out.
Let's talk about that, because in California, there's they've kind of relaxed the law a little bit. It used to be you had to be a 0.1. Now it's 0.08. But the fact of the matter is, the courts have been looking at this, and there's actually diversion programs for drunk driving with a low blood alcohol level. And those diversion programs involve when you cooperated with the police,
right,
and you have a low blood alcohol level, and you didn't do any damage.
And you didn't hit another car.
You didn't hit another car.
You didn't hit a fire extinguisher,
Yeah, right. And so if you're out to dinner with your family and you have a couple of glasses of wine, it's better to think about it. So I'm going to leave this off a little bit, Mark. First of all, you shouldn't be drinking and driving. I'm going to be really straight up. The world is a dangerous place, and there's a lot of drivers that don't know how to drive properly. But you don't want to be one of them. You want to do what's best for the road and be safe. And if you do have a problem with a DUI, make sure you secure counsel immediately.
Oh, another thing is you got to.
Public defender will not help you.
Yeah, and you've got to. You should talk to an attorney and should deal with the DMV right away.
Right.
And the next morning, no matter how bad you feel, you should get an attorney and start talking to the DMV.
All right.
Because you can miss your 10-day deadline.
Okay, well, that's something for another show, and thanks, Mark. And I want to say thank you, everyone, for watching us tonight. This is Law Talk. We're coming back to bring the law, the Constitution, and the events of the day to you each month. Thanks, Mark.
All right, Jim.